Hey guys, welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today we're going to be talking about the big moves for the Pittsburgh Steelers in free agency. Not only some of the people they've brought into the organization, but also some guys they've let walk who were a little surprising, some of them. So I'm going to be talking about all things Steelers today, and then within the next couple of days, I'm going to be making a video basically just reviewing all of free agency outside of my team. Obviously, there were some massive deals that I want to talk about that weren't for the Steelers. You know, the Sam Darnold move being one of the big ones, which was shocking. There's a lot to talk about with that one, but today's video is going to specifically be about my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, some of the big moves we made. So obviously, the first one being the massive trade for DK Metcalf, which is a really out-of-characteristic move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We tend to be a team that, drafts and develops our players, kind of takes care of our own, that type of thing. So to see them go out there and sign another team's, trade for another team's receiver and give him a monster contract is something the Steelers just historically do not do. They don't do that. They never do that, especially with the receiver position. The Steelers are the top of the league when it comes to drafting and developing receivers. So honestly, this was a very surprising move for me, for them to go out there and make a big splash play for DK Metcalf and giving him a fucking monster contract of 4 years, $132 million. I've seen conflicting reports about the details of the contract. Some of them have said that it's actually a 5-year deal, but the one that I saw on NFL.com said 4 years, $132 million, which averages out to $33 million annually. So this automatically makes DK Metcalf one of the top-tier paid receivers in the NFL. So Justin Jefferson is the highest paid receiver in the NFL at $35 million. CeeDee Lamb is right behind him at $34 million. So DK Metcalf is right behind those guys at $33 million. So he is now one of the top paid receivers in the NFL. So what are my thoughts on this trade? We gave up a second-round pick for DK Metcalf and obviously gave him this monster contract. I have kind of conflicting feelings about this. Obviously, when it initially happened, I was really excited because what have I been saying on this channel forever is we need to go out and get another receiver, something I didn't think we were going to do, just looking at how conservative the Steelers front office traditionally is. So I was 100% taken off guard by this. I was really surprised to see them go out and make a big move like this. But as it's, time's gone on, I've been thinking about it more, and it is a little bit of a questionable move for a couple of reasons. So when you're paying a wide receiver this amount of money, I would like them to be just a complete receiver, and that is not at all what DK Metcalf is. I'm not trying to be mean to DK. I love DK Metcalf. I've always liked him. He's really one of the most entertaining players in the NFL to watch. But like I brought up those other receivers before, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase when he gets his bag. These guys are the total package at the receiver position. They can run routes. They have the best hands in the league. They can really get open on anyone in any which way. They're just they have the total skill tree of a receiver. They're complete receivers. Whereas I look at someone like a DK Metcalf, who I, again, really like, but kind of feels a little bit like a one-trick pony. He's not the best route runner. He doesn't have the best hands out there. He's like basically a carbon copy of George Pickens. They're basically the same player as their, top of the league when it comes to those 50-50 jump balls out on the perimeter. There's really, you could argue DK Metcalf is the best in the NFL at that right now. But giving him this monster contract, it also has massive implications for George Pickens as well, which does worry me a little because George Pickens, we already know, is one of the biggest divas in the NFL. So you combine that with the fact that he's looking for his next contract. He's going into a contract year. He's clearly going to be the second option in the receiver room after giving DK this fucking monster deal. He's just a better player than George. George Pickens is going to be the number 2 receiver now, and I don't know how he's going to feel about that. We know Pickens is super moody. That worries me a little bit. And also, it's just kind of redundant, These two players are essentially the same exact player. They're both incredible at going out, dragging the defense down the field, and really you could argue this is the two best players in the league at those 50-50 jump balls. But it doesn't really change the complexity of this offense. It doesn't really address the big issue that I feel like the receiver or the Steelers offense had last year, was they still really struggled with getting production in the middle of the field. Basically you look at all the big plays from the pass game last year, it was always just those lollipop throws, those fucking moon scratchers from Russ to Pickens. This kind of feels like they're doubling down on that. And yeah, it's great to have two guys who can do that, because now obviously your chances are going to go up of the play actually working. But I feel like it doesn't really address the main issue of the Steelers' offense, and that was the lack of versatility, the lack of creativity, really relying on those big splash plays. I don't know. But obviously this is good for Pickens in a way, because he's no longer going to be the main focus on offense. He was really the only threat within the offense. And I talked about this a lot last year. This is why I wanted a receiver, another great receiver, real difference makers, because when George Pickens was hurt last year, when he was gone, the Steelers offense was totally anemic. It was totally stale. They had really no life. They had no fucking pulse to that offense those couple games last year when Pickens was out, because there were really no difference makers. I like Calvin Austin a lot. Van Jefferson's fine. But you take Pickens out and you try to use those guys as like lead receivers play after play. It was a fucking joke. It was a fucking joke. And I feel like people don't talk about that enough as to why the Steelers had such a disappointing second stretch of the season. Obviously their schedule got a lot tougher. We talked about that a lot. But Pickens was essentially the passing game offense. You took him off and the offense was totally anemic. So like I said, this is why I wanted another receiver, but it feels like kind of an overlap to me. It feels kind of like, obviously you just say the Steelers got DK Metcalf in a vacuum. That is really fucking excited. When it happened, I was losing my mind because I didn't expect something like that to happen for this team. But as time's gone on, I've thought about it more. This could be problematic for Pickens. It really could be. And I don't know how I feel about it. Obviously, all we can do as fans is watch it play out, see what happens. But as a YouTuber, I have to give you my opinions on it. And I just feel like it's kind of a weird move. It's not like a seamless fit for me. Yeah, he's going to have big plays. I'm really going to enjoy watching him here. But when you're giving out that kind of money, it's a weird move for me, because you're like, they're the same exact player as Pickens. You're already going to have problems with Pickens now. Like, he's not going to be the number one option, and he's going to want his money, so he's going to want more touches, and it doesn't really address the middle of the field concerns. And giving DK that much money, and he's not the most overall polished receiver out there, I can nitpick this to death, but that's kind of my thoughts on the DK Metcalf thing. I'm glad we did it. I don't want it to come off like I am against this move. I'm really glad the Steelers did this. Like I said, this is a really out-of-characteristic thing for them to do. They traditionally don't fucking do stuff like this, ever, especially at receiver. But like I said, those are just my little nitpick things. So you'll have to let me know on that. We can move on now to the acquisition of Darius Slay, which isn't surprising to me. This is kind of Tomlin's MO, to do this with these big-name veteran players on defense that are past their prime. We did this with Patrick Peterson. We did this with Melvin Ingram. We've done it with all kinds of, guys that were really good probably 5 years ago. Getting Darius Slay 5 years ago would have been incredible. But now it's clear Darius Slay is out of his prime. I've always liked Darius Slay, but this to me has Patrick Peterson written all over it. To me, I don't think this moves the needle whatsoever for our defense. It's cool to have a big-name guy like Slay, but I don't think he's really going to make a big impact on this team. He's clearly past his prime. There's a reason the Eagles cut him. And yeah, the Eagles were in a good position to move off an old vet like Slay because they have those rookie corners, but it's clear he's not the same player. He's not even close to the number one shutdown corner Pro Bowler he was just a couple years ago. So to me, it's like a little frustrating, because it's like, we always do this same thing on defense. Why can we never go out and get these guys in their primes? The only guy we ever really did that with was Minka. We went out and got him when he was in his prime. We kind of did it with Joe Hayden a little. Like, Joe Hayden was still kind of like in the twilight years of his prime. But we always go out and get these big-name, washed-up vets. And I think Darius Slay is just the latest example of that. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, and it is more so of like a Joe Hayden situation where he actually does have a couple really good years here, but I think the odds are against it. If I had to bet, this is probably going to be Slay's last year in the NFL, and I just don't really know what he's going to bring to the table. I hope I am wrong because I really like Darius Slay. But next up, I wanted to talk about two guys that left the Steelers organization. One of them being actually really surprising to me, one of them being not so surprising. So I'll start off with Najee Harris, who is now a member of the Los Angeles Chargers, signing a one-year contract worth around $9 million. And I put it at pretty much an 80% chance we were not going to be bringing Najee back after we didn't pick up his fifth-year option. I thought maybe there was a chance they were trying to get like a better bargain deal on him in free agency, so maybe he could still stay. But that's never a good sign whenever your fifth-year option doesn't get picked up, especially when you were a first-round pick. So the fan in me is sad to see Najee go because he's been one of my favorite players on the team. I have his jersey, so now I have to go get a new fucking Steelers jersey because Najee's gone. He's the only current Steeler jersey I had, so I'll have to see, who I'm going to be getting now. But yeah, He's been one of my favorites. I get it. He's been disappointing for a first-round running back, but I also feel like he is, in a way, underrated. Yeah, he doesn't have the crazy splash plays like a Saquon, but I feel like he's just a really consistently reliable guy. He's had 1,000 yards every year of his career. He just plays. He's never hurt. He's really an Iron Man type player. He's a bruiser. And I think he's going to fit in perfectly with the Chargers operation, what they're building there, prioritizing running the ball. They have such a good offensive line. We know Harbaugh's philosophy is that old school style of football where they prioritize running the football. They took someone like J.K. Dobbins, who's a good player. I don't think J.K. was ever like amazing with the Ravens. He was just kind of like a cool little back there. They took him and they made him look like one of the best running backs in the NFL. I think Najee Harris, just in a vacuum, has way more talent than J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a better player overall than J.K. Dobbins. So they took Dobbins, who was like okay. I know he was hurt a lot on the Ravens, but he never really was anything like special with the Ravens. They took him and made him look amazing. So they take Najee, who's been in kind of a fucked up situation with our offense. Our entire offense, Najee's been here, has been kind of a mess. You take him and put him behind that O-line. He's never had a good O-line his whole time in Pittsburgh. Now you're putting him up behind an elite O-line with a team that has a strong philosophy on running the ball. I think this honestly was like the best scenario for Najee Harris. So for me, as like a fan of the player, I'm happy for him because this is like the perfect situation for a player like Najee Harris because he clearly didn't have like a pretty big market. He didn't have a bunch of teams that were willing to give him like a long-term deal. So if you had to go to any team on a one-year deal as a running back, I think the Chargers honestly is the perfect destination for all the reasons I've brought up. So I really think Najee is going to feast with the Chargers and go on to get a big contract, whether it is from the Chargers or another team. I think this is a really good move for his career to go and play behind that line, to play with Herbert, to play in Harbaugh's offensive scheme. Sad he's gone, though. We are now moving on with Jaylen Warren, who's going to be our number one back going forward, at least for this next year. I think they picked him up on like a one-year, $5 million deal for Jaylen Warren, which I don't know how to feel about because Jaylen Warren is such a streaky player. If you're not really a Steelers fan, you probably don't even know who that is, Jaylen Warren. You might, but you probably just don't really care. But as someone who watches every single game, he's a frustrating player because he will have games where it's like, oh my God, this is the best player on this team. Like he is literally carrying the fucking offense. And then he'll go on this stretch of 5 games where he's like not even there. He looks totally invisible. He's totally streaky. And that was in a committee with Najee where he was the number 2 back on the team. So now you're elevating him to be the number 1 guy, the number 1 running back. Even if we draft a rookie, say in the 2nd or 3rd round, whatever it is, he's still going to be the lead back on this team. So I don't love that, especially with how Arthur Smith ran this offense last year he was trying to get the run game going. He tried to put an emphasis on the running last year. Trying to do that now with Jaylen Warren as your number one lead back, I don't like that. I really don't like that, and especially when I look at the fact that Najee only wanted $4 million more for the running back market. $9 million for Najee, I don't think was that crazy of a thing to do. So I personally would have rather just kept Najee Harris and let Jaylen Warren go, if that's really what it came down to. But honestly, I think the Steelers could have very easily kept both. But for the fact that they let Najee go, to me, that kind of tells me that they're going to draft a running back. I would be very, very surprised if the Steelers don't draft a running back within the first 4 rounds of the upcoming draft. So I am looking to that. I do like that because this is one of the most stacked running back classes of a long, long time. You got all kinds of great running backs. You got Omarion Hampton. You got Ashton Jeanty, of course, the Heisman snub. I still think Jeanty should have won Heisman. You got the kid from Iowa. I don't remember his name, but he's like a stud. You got the 2 from Ohio State. You got all kinds of great. You got Scattaboo. Like, there's so many good running backs in this upcoming class, and I'd be happy with any of them on the Steelers. So I'm going to be okay with letting Najee go if we draft one of those running backs I just mentioned. I'll be okay with it. But if they don't and they just roll into next year's, Jaylen Warren's the guy, I'm going to be a little pissed. And then we have our last thing I'm going to talk about in today's video for the Steelers, and that is Justin Fields signing a 2-year contract with the New York Jets, which came as a bit of a surprise for me personally because I've been talking with, my uncle, I've been talking with my friends, my brother about what are the Steelers going to do at quarterback? And I really honestly thought Fields was going to be the guy going forward. Like, if I had to have bet money just a week ago, I would have told you Justin Fields is probably going to be the Steelers quarterback for the next 3 to 4 seasons. I could have really realistically saw that with how he performed the first 6 games of the year, played really good. We went 4-2 with Fields as the starter. He had 10 total touchdowns, 2 total turnovers. Didn't light it up or anything when you watched him play. It was kind of a sporadic type player, because he is very inaccurate. That's the one thing I always mention with Fields. He's a fucking amazing athlete. He's one of the best athletes in the league, but his accuracy is such a big problem. If he could just put that together, he could be such a great player. But I think he did enough this past year to earn himself as a starter. So in that way, I am happy for Fields. He won me over. I'm a Justin Fields fan. I want to see him go on to succeed with the Jets. He deserves to be a starter based on that sample size we saw. So I can't really comment on this from the Steelers' perspective just yet because I don't even know who our quarterback is going forward. We don't have a quarterback right now. The rumors are it's either going to be Russ or Aaron Rodgers. So I can't really comment on the Steelers' quarterback side of this, but I can comment on the Jets side of this is I don't really think this, in the grand scheme of the NFL, this doesn't really matter because if you guys listen to me for a long time, you know that I had so many issues with the Jets going into this year. So, they had to go out there and get a guy. They were clearly moving off of Aaron. So, you had to go get a quarterback for sure. This doesn't really change anything for me for the Jets. The Jets still have so many problems with this team. They still have arguably the worst owner in the NFL. So, getting Justin Fields, it could in a way like breathe new life into the team just because you're going into another chapter. You're getting a lot younger. You're trying to move past the disaster that was the Aaron Rodgers experiment. But I just don't think it's going to matter. I don't think it's going to change anything. You're putting Fields with another defensive coach. I think this organization and this offense is so much more unstable compared to the Steelers. So I think that Fields is going to go back to looking more sporadic. And he already was sporadic with the Steelers, but we just had more of a good operation around him. So I think that you're going to see Fields look a lot more like Chicago Bears Justin Fields with the Jets because they're a clown show. They're arguably the worst ran team in the NFL. So you're putting Fields there, a guy who needs fine-tuned, a guy who needs a lot of mentorship and stability around him. These are things that I thought he cared about because he fucking said he did, He said that he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh because of the leadership and stability. You're going to a team that possesses absolutely zero of those traits and those qualities. And like I said, I don't blame Fields for going. If the Steelers weren't going to give him his money, the Jets had the better offer. Good for him. Go get your money. I don't blame him whatsoever for going there. But it's a circus show. I don't know how, as an NFL player, you could look at that and be like, yeah, I want to go play for the New York Jets. It's a fucking mess. It's been a mess forever. They have the longest playoff drought. And like I said, this is not going to move the needle for the Jets. You know, what did they win? 4 or 5 games this past year. They're probably going to win the same amount this next year with Fields. So for Fields' sake, I hope I'm wrong. I want to see him go light it up. I don't think it's going to happen. And as for the Steelers quarterback, I can't comment on it until I know who our quarterback is going to be. I kind of would rather just them go with Russ on a Baker Mayfield type contract. I don't know how realistically that is. I don't know if Russ wants more money. I'd rather them 100%. I'd rather them just stick with Russ over Aaron Rodgers. I don't want Aaron Rodgers on my team whatsoever. If he ends up being a Steeler, I'll embrace him, but as it is right now, I would much rather have Russ. You know, there were glimpses this year where Russ looked really good in a Steelers uniform, and we just brought in his guy from Seattle, DK Metcalf. There's going to be an immediate connection with DK. So, yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, stay tuned. I definitely want to drop a video the second we know who the Steelers QB is going to be. And also, I want to talk about all those other massive deals that went down around the league outside of Pittsburgh, but that's just kind of been me rambling about the Steelers free agency period thus far. If you made it this far in the video, appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe.